So, you want to get started in 3D printing. You've seen all these cool 3D prints across the internet. Maybe you want to study something like robotics engineering. Or maybe you've even seen some of my videos and have gotten super inspired and want to start out this awesome hobby for yourself. The only question is how. How do you know what printer to get? What filament to use? There's so many questions, and 3D printing can feel really difficult when you're just trying to get started. But it's actually super easy and simple. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to get the right printer, how to get filament, and everything else you need to make all the cool 3D prints, cosplays, and robots that you want. So the first question is, what kind of 3D printer do I need? And that depends a lot on what you want to do with 3D printing. Maybe you want to do robots, make robot arms, or maybe Iron Man masks, or droids like R2-D2, or maybe you want to do cosplays and bring them to Comic-Cons, or even little fidget toys and sell them at places like the fairs and stuff. I kind of want to do all of those things, and we'll get to what kind of printer I have in a second. But you can literally get started in 3D printing for about $100, and if it's on sale, maybe even less. But then you have to ask, is an $100 printer the right kind of printer for you? There are mainly two types of printers, one that have what's called a sliding bed and one with an XY axis. The ones with a sliding bed are the ones like the Bambu Lab A1 printer, and it is going to go back and forth and the nozzle is going to move up and down. And so it's a pretty good printer, and that's where you get your printers that are a bit more cheaper on the $200 to $300, even sometimes $400 range. But what comes with these printers is that since so many things are moving and the bed is going back and forth, it gives you a lot less stability. And so if you're trying to make something really big, like say a giant Iron Man helmet, or something really detailed like statues, then it may be a bit harder for you on a sliding bed because it's not as great with details or doing really long prints and having great reliability. The second kind of 3D printer, the one that I have, is an XY axis printer, which means the bed doesn't move back and forth with this printer. Instead, it stays right in place. It just goes up and down, and then the nozzle comes forward, goes forward, backwards, up and down, and does everything, while all the bed does is simply move up and down. This makes it a lot better when you are trying to do more detailed prints like statues and Iron Man helmets, because it'll give you great reliability and make sure that this stays still and your print stays still while only the head moves. My personal recommendation to you guys would be the Bambu Lab P1S. This is the best printer that I have ever worked with, and that's because it can handle all the stuff that I've said. It can do the fidget toys, it can do Iron Man helmets or Spider-Man helmets, it can make the cosplays, the robot arms, anything you throw at it, this printer can handle. And the only issues that these printers have had are things that I've done myself, like forgetting to put the bed plate back in or something. These printers are literally the perfect and all-rounder printers for beginners. You can even add a color changing system later on, so you can do multicolor 3D prints. And if you have pets, it even has an enclosure. That way cats and dogs don't mess with anything. And if you look online on Bambu Lab's website, the printers are only about $600. And a lot of the times they're on sale. I got mine for about $500 with the color changing system. Now, no matter what 3D printer you decide to get, I would definitely recommend a Bambu Lab printer, because Bambu Lab printers come pre-assembled just right out of the box. I only had to spend about an hour setting mine up. And then Bambu Lab printers have a great reputation for their software. Their software is made personally to the Bambu Lab printers. Therefore, you have less errors and it just works way better, and it's one of the best 3D printing softwares that there is. And finally, like I've been saying, Bambu Lab has the least amount of errors I've ever seen 3D printers have. Mine only has errors if I mess something up. In my previous printers, I wouldn't even do anything and it would just go wrong. But you can see more about that in my other video where I compare both my Bambu Lab printer and my previous Elugo Neptune 4 Pro printer. But that's my best recommendation. Get a Bambu Lab printer because they will be the best beginner printer that you can ever get. Now that you've picked out your 3D printer and hopefully bought it, it's time to feed the printer to make it work. But what do we feed it with? The answer is filament. And I like to think of filament as basically this magical roll of spaghetti. You feed the printer the magical roll of spaghetti, and in return, it's going to give you a really cool 3D printed piece. But how does that work? Basically, imagine if you had a glue gun, and you're going to make one layer, then another layer, and another layer, and you're going to keep going up and making all your layers until you get something like a benchy. And that is how filament works. And there are a lot of different types of filament. You've got PLA filament, you have this cool double color changing filament, You have stronger filament or water-resistant filament. You can even get flexible filament if you want to make armor or something like that. But if you are just starting out with 3D printing, I would recommend getting PLA filament. It is the most basic filament you can get. It's very cheap, comes in a whole lot of different colors, and is the best you can get once you're just getting started. Because it's really all that you need. You don't need any type of filament that does anything fancy. You just need the filament that can make the basic stuff that you're going to want to start making. The next question is, where do I get the 3D print filament? And the answer is basically anywhere. You can get it off of Amazon, Hobby Lobby. You can go to the store where you got your printer, like Bamboo Labs or Creality. You can get filament from pretty much anywhere nowadays. I personally would recommend Amazon because Amazon has all the brands of 3D print filament. I have Elugo filament over here, Creality over here, and Bamboo Lab filament over here. And because Amazon usually always has sales, you can get them for pretty much a good 15% off or 30% off on Amazon. And now, once you have your filament, all you have to do is take your filament, feed it to your printer, and it is going to make you a lot of cool 3D prints. Another thing with 3D printing filament is that you no longer have to buy the most expensive filament. You can buy something like Bamboo Lab filament, which is pretty expensive, but also kind of cool because it syncs up to your printer and tells you what color it is. But you don't have to do that. I personally really like the Elugo filament because it's really good, basic PLA, comes in a lot of cool colors, and is usually cheaper than the other filaments. But I definitely wouldn't cheap out all the way and get a $6 filament off of Amazon. That could lead to more failed 3D prints, or maybe it's not that good and you don't really know. So I would definitely get a good brand of filament, but not the best brand that's going to cost you $1 million. And now once you've been 3D printing for a while and you've used a lot of basic PLA filament, maybe you want to try something cooler. Maybe you want to try out a new dual color type of PLA or glow-in-the-dark PLA. There's translucent PLA, there's a stronger kind, which I have here, which is called PETG. There's a whole lot of cool kinds. So start out with the basics and then level up and try out all the cool kinds of filament that you can. Now that we've got the 3D printer and the filament, it's time to start making all the cool stuff with your printer. But where do we get the files? How do we make the stuff like a Benchy? Well, if you got lucky, your printer probably already has some uploaded files for you, especially if you got something like a Bamboo Lab or an Elugo printer. And you can just go to wherever those are on your printer, usually on the little touch screen, and just start printing out whatever pre-made files they had, which is usually a Benchy or a Buddha, something cool to make sure your printer works, and so you get your first couple of prints. But after you've done those and you've gotten kind of bored of them, where do you get your next 3D prints? Thankfully, a lot of this stuff is free. People who just love to model stuff, model 3D prints or models called STLs and then upload them onto places for free. These websites can be places like Thingiverse and MakerWorld and things. And you can just pick which model you want, download it, and get it sent right to your 3D printer. My favorite website for free 3D prints is Thingiverse. And that's because Thingiverse has a lot of good 3D prints without a lot of random junk on their website. But one tip would be to make sure that whatever print you pick out has a good amount of hearts and comments and maybe even some makes. That way you can see that it's a good print and hopefully won't fail. Now that you've done a lot of free 3D prints and you've made a whole lot of cool stuff, maybe you want to try upgrading and making something harder, but you want a bit more of a quality 3D print. Kind of like my Spider-Man mask or an Iron Man mask. Now is when you kind of want to start looking for paid 3D models. And there's a lot of places for paid 3D models. But you do have to be careful because now you are spending actual money and hope that you get something that's a good model instead of someone trying to scam you. My favorite place is DO3D because they always have good models and oftentimes they're always on sale too. Right now they even have a sale. You can get Spider-Man models, Iron Man models, basically anything you want. Other cool places are places like Yosh Studios, who also has a lot of really cool masks and models of characters from places like Marvel and DC. And I've also heard of places like Wireframe. I haven't used them much, but it sounds very good. Just remember to be careful where you're spending your money and check if maybe they have an Instagram or a YouTube channel. That way you know you're getting good quality models instead of being scammed. Now that you've got your files, it's time to 3D print. And to do this, you're going to need a software called a slicer. Kind of like I explained with the filament, a slicer is what's going to take your model and make a whole lot of little layers and send it over to your printer, and it's going to make a really cool 3D model. But you have to pick what kind of software slicer that you want. Just like with filament, there's tons of different slicers you can get, and many of them are free. I actually don't know any that are paid. But Just like how your printer came with its own brand of filament, your printer probably has its own slicer too. Bamboo Lab has its own called Bamboo Studio, and then Creality has one, and Elegoo has one, and a lot of them even work with each other. In fact, some of the best ones are ones like Ultimaker Cura and Orca Slicer, and they work with almost every printer. In my opinion, if you don't have Bamboo Studio, or the type of slicer for your printer, or just don't want the type of slicer for your printer, I would recommend Ultimaker Cura or Orca Slicer. I used both of them back when I had my Elegoo printer, and they were the best slicers that I have ever used because they have a lot of really advanced features, are super easy to use. You just drop your model in, slice it, and you can send it on a thumb drive and send it to your printer. And now that you got your slicer ready, all you have to do is take whatever model you picked out, drag it into your slicer, and there you go. You're ready to print. Say now you've been using a ton of 3D models, you figured out how to do the paid models, the free models, you even tried glow-in-the-dark filament, but you're getting kind of tired of using other people's models and you want to try making your own. Well, it's super easy. All you have to do is first pick what kind of modeling software you want to use. My two favorites are Blender and Fusion 360. Blender's cool for making a lot of artsy stuff, and Fusion 360 is pretty cool if you want to make things more mechanical or for robots and things like that. Then all you have to do is go onto YouTube, type in Blender tutorials or Fusion 360 tutorials for 3D printing, and in no time you'll be learning how to make keychains or small robot arms and all sorts of stuff. You now completely know how to start 3D printing. But as a bonus, I'm sure a lot of you experienced hobbyists have been wondering, are there any materials or tools that you need to start 3D printing? And the answer is yes and no. Because you can 3D print benchies and things like flexi dinosaurs and simple stuff all day long. But say you want to make something more complicated, like this Iron Man mask back here, or a Dr. Doom mask that has electronics in it. Well, then you are going to need a bit more tools. I would recommend getting a simple set of nuts and bolts that you can use, a screwdriver, a soldering iron, some Gorilla Glue, and as you do projects, you're going to level up and get more materials. Like with this Iron Man helmet, you're going to get some servo motors. If you want to make this Spider-Man helmet, you're going to get some magnets, and you're definitely going to need some Gorilla Glue. So simply start out small and maybe get the basic supplies that you think you're going to need for a crafting-like hobby, and then keep leveling up as you go. You now have all the information you need to become a master at 3D printing. And with the help of your printer, your filament, and your files, you can make anything that you can imagine. Whether you're trying to get into cosplay, robotics, or just want to start a new hobby, I hope this tutorial was really helpful to you. Drop a comment if I missed anything, and let me know what tutorial you'd like to see next. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.